Did I upload
Moving
that?
on.
I did. Okay, good, good. I was like,
So next up, we got Miss Sarah dropping a fucking hot piece right here.
all right.
Let me pull up the notes, submission notes.
Do you want to read these ones? Don't get used to it. At least once a month, Hasted. Since we're doing these at least once a month.
That's not the original submission. Shit. Was that? Oh, that was original. My bad.
Fuck, I'm so fucking paranoid every time I drink something right now.
All right, so we got Sarah's submission here, aka Silent. If you guys don't know her, she says, "I need help with lighting in order to make the individual stand out from each other. Someone suggested having the outer glow on the moon and rim lighting on the animals, which is not bad advice, but I have absolutely no idea how to go about achieving either in a way that doesn't look too bad." Weird, goofy, smiling face. Also, I'm struggling with the front paws because it didn't have a solid reference for them, and it kind of doesn't look like they're on the rock. So basically, creating the illusion of like the actual fox belonging in that space, right? It's Fox Anatomy though, so if y'all can't help with that, it's fine. Thanks in advance. All right, so I think you had a pretty cool idea here. It's really kind of a gorgeous start to an illustration here. But yeah, so we have a fox looking at I'm guessing a little hummingbird with a moon sort of silhouetting them in the background on the little like edge of the cliff right there. That's pretty cool. You've always done a really good job at like rendering like fur and details like that. So
yeah, the fur render looks really freaking amazing. Even the movement that you've added to the wings came out really nice. And I love the fox's gaze. To the hummingbird. Like it's either like friend or I'm going to eat you.
I'm gonna say it's more like a hungry look.
No, it's friend. It's friend. It's friend.
Too much Disney for you, Pam.
Never.
Sarah says activates invisibility power. Don't you dare.
No one is allowed to disappear during your critiques.
So yeah, this is a good start.
Oh, you don't. Okay, hold on. Thank you, Diva. I think. Do you not have permissions to view, critique, finish? Really, you should. Actually. Read messages. I'll look at that later, but you should. It's set to visibility.
All right, so we got Sarah's piece right here.
All right.
Paste that in. So, oh, that's a little interesting. Hold on.
What happened? Ta-da!
So yeah, we didn't a little bit less notes in this because I think it's already a really strong sort of foundation going on here. But there's definitely some key things we can talk here. I think your concern for value is relevant here. You have a very well. We'll get to that, I guess, maybe later on. Why don't we jump into the left side portion here first?
Okay, so the things that you were kind of struggling with was making the individual elements stand out from each other. So one of the things that we wanted to get into, in addition to values, is composition. Composition is one of those things that it's honestly really difficult to learn, and like we've actually thought about like how we would do composition studies for you guys, but we haven't really figured out a good method to it. So hopefully just through repetition of us seeing some of this information over and over again will help. So the first thing we wanted to sort of address was composition. And let me zoom in on this area over here.
Yeah, I'm zooming in.
All right. Zoom. All right. So I gotta zoom out a little bit because I can't read my own notes. All right. So again, we go into this idea of negative space. And within your composition, it's actually a little bit of the opposite of what we were coming across with previous, where there was too much negative space. With yours, I actually felt like there was a little bit too little. So what we did was we lassoed the moon in the background and we made it a little bit smaller so it had more breathing room on the side of the illustration. Yeah. And the other thing is with your original illustration, the hummingbird was pretty much like, if you look at the original over here, the wing is almost tangent to the side of the moon here, and you never want that, because what it ends up looking like, it looks like the hummingbird is part of the moon instead.
Yeah.
Which
Your-
I'm
your val-
assuming is not the
Just to-
case.
Yeah, I was gonna say your values are so close between like the moon features as well as the hummingbird. Like it looks like a crater from a distance, right? So keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, so I lassoed the hummingbird as well. I pulled it off to the left, and actually, I would almost recommend having the wing go cut off to the left a little bit off the edge because the foxtail
Right.
is as well, and that would help balance out the piece. But I did increase the size of the hummingbird too, so that it was more readable against because the moon is abnormally large, so I don't think we're really playing into like realistic proportions here. So it's okay if the hummingbird is reading a little bit larger as long as it's reading to the audience better, right?
Yeah, like, exaggeration within reason.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, so the hummingbird was enlarged, and I don't know, you okay? Do you need water? Would you like some spider with your water?
Yes, please keep going.
Okay. So the hummingbird was enlarged and then shifted over to the right. The fox got a similar treatment. The fox was not enlarged, but we did shift the fox over to the left. And the reason why we did that is because of what you mentioned with the paws. The paws sort of felt like he was sliding off of the cliff. And the reason why is because there really wasn't enough negative space or ground space, I should say, for him to like be sitting on. So we shifted the fox over to the left, and then we extended out the edge, the top edge of the cliff.
The lip of the cliff.
The lip of the cliff. Thank you. Yeah. And brought that up a little bit. And when I did that, I actually adjusted the way the paws looked as well, because now instead of like, I'm gonna try and demonstrate this. So now the cliff looked like this initially, right? And so before the paws was angled like this. But now we've flattened it out the plane like this. So the paw itself is going to look a little bit bigger because now it's bent. So that's basic. This is so awkward to do.
I know.
So now it's bent, right? So we just added a little bit more of a box shape for the paw to get it to read.
Were you saying the paws of the what? Paws of the what? You're like rhyming something.
What did I say?
The lip of the cliff, the paws and the claws. You're saying something.
I don't know.
I immediately thought of the wrist rest of the breast.
Oh my god.
I think those are good takeaways, though. Yeah, I think sort of bringing the moon down a bit more in terms of size, you just get more of a night sky visible, which is great. And then like there's actually like a room to breathe in the left and right of the moon too, which is nice. My favorite change that Pam made here really is the hummingbird being slightly increased in size. It still feels within reason. I think you can probably play with that size, maybe a little bit less or more. It's up to you. But the favorite aspect of that is the fact that the fox overlaps the moon. It breaks the actual circular, like the sphere of the background going down the lower left. But you now have an element which also breaks that circular shape in the upper right-hand corner. So you have like mirroring, breaking of like that, the anchoring shape right there, right? So that's important, I think. Instead of having like the actual bird confined, it's actually they're both breaking that sort of anchoring element of the piece right there. So these are great changes, I think, that Pam sort of eyeballed and made right here.
So just keep in mind, this has no value changes to it. This is purely composition.
Yes.
And already with the changes to the composition, the fox and the hummingbird stand out so much more.
Yeah, it's... So with that being said, though, if you kind of take a step back and you squint at it, there's some value separation going on. The night sky, looking at this current form, it definitely kind of has a decent contrast against the moon now that there's more sky visible, right? But there is a lot of kind of mid-tone gray. So you're really getting very minimal in terms of a wide range of value. It's close, but it needs more emphasis, especially to kind of make it cohesive. So we're going to jump on the next part here. God, these images are huge, so it's like lagging my phone.
Oh no, really? I'm sorry. I should have just sent you the PDF file. I'll send you the PSD file next time. You can just open that up on yours instead.
That's all right. So I went ahead in here and I started, and I did simply through some like different layer types, multiply layers, etc. But I really wanted to play up like a night sky. So yeah, I ended up throwing a gradient on. Pulling back on the actual like moon and the fox itself, but getting that night sky a really strong contrast against the actual moon. And I'm not even doing anything to create like a rim light around the moon or glow. But yeah, it naturally kind of creates that look, right? You're getting a
Mm-hmm.
night sky, speckled stars, all that star detail you're throwing in there is still visible. You can still, play a bit more or pull back a bit more, but you're getting a great contrast right there. Um, and then you're getting a sort of a nice strong mid-tone, or the fox and the hummingbird and the forest. Um, and we threw in, because you would get some ambient lighting and obviously a backlight from the for the moon hitting both these animals, but there'd be ambient lighting, light hitting the actual ground from the moon and reflecting back up at the fox and stuff too. So there'd be kind of an overall ambient light going on here. With that being said, you still have some key structural shadows going on. So things like you probably have like a shadow kind of hitting like this kind of crunch where the stomach is, and the elbow, and like the back, the hind quarters of the fox and stuff, right, and the tail.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of these areas would definitely be in a shadowed kind of configuration. You probably have a bit of a cast shadow too on the cliff here. So an actual cast shadow, we didn't really like play it up a ton, but you definitely get more of a cast shadow on the fox actually on the cliffside here. May not be super dramatic, but you definitely would get a darker space, right? Um, you probably get a darker shadow and play up the darker value on the backside facing away from the moon on the cliff here too, and maybe pull back a little bit and get some more highlights kind of chunked in here and there as well. But just really minor tweaks. Um, you had thrown some kind of like highlights, like these white highlight edges on the hummingbird, get it back low. You don't really need that anymore on the actual hummingbird. You can actually kind of, I kind of like erase them by putting a darker value around the hummingbird. But you kind of want like dark versus light to contrast, kind of create visual, like, not conflict, but you want to create a visual dynamic where things sort of can stand out against each other. Case in point here too, the wing that's now going and abutting over the outer space here, the night sky, where you had maybe a black line or a gray line, I actually threw in a highlight line on that wing, so you actually can see the edge wing going up into the night sky right there. Do not fear the dark.
Dark side. Join the dark side.
When in doubt, black it out.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
so that's actually Crease's motto right there. But yeah, so I think that's just some really basic, subtle things you can do, and you can experiment with this. I told you I threw a multiply layer on. I probably used like 4 different multiply layers with different effects and like different sort of like soft edge brushes. Piled up certain areas where I wanted it darker, pull back with an eraser to make certain areas be less affected by the darker shadow. But it's a really easy way to kind of just create quick shadows and values and highlights actually on top of that to kind of start working and building the forms that you want, right?
Yeah.
What else did we say about this?
Um.
We said
Oh,
consider light
the
source. Go ahead, sorry.
consider light source. We went over that. I think the last thing that we changed was the moon details, right?
Oh, actually, one quick thing too. So if you do want to like pull out minor like details, like you have a lot of fur texture, right? Like on the legs. So because you're gonna have a lot of information in shadow, you don't want to lose all that detail work. So maybe, like for example, this is really quick brush strokes here, right? But on the front paws, I actually threw a couple. I color sampled the value from like the front chest area, and I just basically tapped some like fur texture in, and that way you kind of get the illusion of like the moonlight like hitting the top of like the paws, or like the fur directly above it. And that's a way that you can kind of like just kind of create that fur, that texture you have throughout it, but do it subtly in a darker area. No, really. And then like, if you want to create more contrast, obviously this moon being so bright, what you can do instead is do a sample one of your darker shadows, and then kind of do some like tap sort of fur texture, maybe along like the front chest area here, this little curved piece where it's more of like a sort of a softer mid-tone against the bright, where it kind of gets lost. Carve in that shape, get some like darker shadows along that edge, right, and along the back edge. You can even do that like on the tip of the tail. The tail is super dark and it's right against the night sky. Well, I sampled that same brighter value, and I just tapped some moonlight, kind of hitting the top of that tail right there, and also along the back edge of the fox right there, his hindquarters.
And this is
So
such a
like
pretty subtle like light transition here. Like seriously, like I think once dive into the dark sides there, like rim lighting is gonna be like one of your favorite things ever, because like it's, I don't know, it just has this quality to it that you're just like, where can I put in a rim light?
Yeah, I mean it's an easy way to kind of create. there are going to be situations like where you want the forms. We talked about this before, but you want the forms to just be a big chunk of a shadow. And maybe there will be situations like in this illustration, like where you want like the leg in shadow to then blend into the actual cast shadow on a cliff, and like you kind of lose some of those details, and that's fine. Staggering, thanks for the resub. How you doing? That Twitch Prime sub.
Pog.
Aww. Thank you.
Hi,
Appreciate
Staggering. Bye,
Thank you,
Staggering.
thank you. Have a good one. Thanks for being here. But yeah, so sometimes like having like big shapes of shadow is totally fine. You see that in like lots of like master paintings and stuff too. But keep in mind, if you do need to emphasize a clear transition between like two figures, two pieces within an environment, an overlapping shape, an overlapping form, then you need to probably emphasize that via a value change as well. Value changes are a great way to imply visual information. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about the last point?
Oh yeah. So the last thing that we did, that we talked about is we pulled back a bit on the details of your moon, mostly because right now you have 3 major elements, right? And they're all hyper detailed to the point where they're kind of fighting each other for your attention, and you gotta kind of decide in terms of like the hierarchy of things, what do you want the viewer to see first? We obviously made the assumption that the fox and the hummingbird are what you want the viewers to pay attention to. So as a result, what we did is we lassoed the moon, and then we brightened the value of it, and then also added a Gaussian blur?
Yeah, I did a really slight, like a 2.5% Gaussian blur on the moon.
Yes.
Just to blur out some of the texture.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's going to be an environmental detail. It's far in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not going to see those craters so vividly.
Cradles.
And the thing is, by taking out, that's another way to build contrast, is not through value, but you can build contrast through visual clarity and detail. You want your focal points to be the most rendered aspect of the piece. That doesn't mean that you don't want to have detail in your environment or in the background, but those things need to probably have less emphasis. Otherwise, you have so many things competing with each other as a focal. Reducing the actual clarity on that moon is going to let your fox and hummingbird just breathe.
Yep.
And read better. So, hope that helps you. I think it's a great start, though. It's a really strong piece already.
Anything we've critiqued today, and you guys do decide to push forward to finish with, we would love to see, by the way.
Yeah.
It's always just kind of a cool thing to see. Hopefully we helped, you know? It's like one of those things, like, hopefully we helped. Alright, let me go ahead and upload.
Yep.
Study game critique. Alright. And let us know what you think about these pages too. Like, are these page notes sort of like with like image examples and everything helpful for you guys? Like, do you like this sort of format? You know, et cetera. This is like the first time we're really doing like an open sort of like community critique, stuff like that. So we're always open to like feedback on like what you guys like and didn't like, and you know, if we made you cry, we can be nicer next time, you know. Anything like that.
Don't cry, dry your eye. All right, so
last one.